Hi guys, so before we get into it, a very quick disclaimer that you'll find all my other Hammer reviews in my Hammer playlist, and there will be spoilers today, although I will give you one last warning when I'm about to spoil the ending, just to be kind. So this is a thriller about a young woman called Brenda. She's from Liverpool, and one day she decides that in order to meet a man, she's going to have to move to London. There's no men in Liverpool, apparently. I guess at the start of the 70s, they were all busy at Anfield watching the Liverpool glory years, and they had no time for relationships, maybe. Makes me wonder what I would have done if I'd have been around as an adult at the start of the 70s. Where would I have gone to meet a woman then? Liverpool? But anyway, Brenda moves to London. She gets a job at a fashion boutique. She starts putting herself about, but nobody's really showing much of an interest in her, until she meets a guy called Peter, and the two of them start a relationship. But we know already that Peter is an absolute psychopath. He's already murdered several women by the time he meets Brenda, and it's clear that she will probably be the next victim. So this film quickly sets itself on a course for a confrontation at the end, where we know that Brenda will find out what Peter is really like, and they'll have some kind of fight or something. This character, Brenda, is absolutely lovely. She's a little bit slow intellectually, but she doesn't have a bad bone in her body. She is just pure niceness through and through, and I couldn't help but like her from the very start of this story. I'd say she's a cross between Carrie White, the girl from Pan's Labyrinth, Little Voice, and the girl from American Pie who likes to play with flutes. If you mix all those characters together in one bowl, you will basically get Brenda from Straight On Till Morning. But what a character. I'm a bit confused about her age, though. So the actress who plays her in this, Rita Tushington, who I'd never heard of before watching this film, she was about 30 when this was filmed, and she looks about 30, I'd say. But I just found it difficult to believe that this woman would have gotten to 30 without having anything to do with guys before, especially when she throws herself about so much. I wonder if the film intends for her to be roughly sort of early 20s, maybe. Films do that a lot, you know, cast actresses who are older than the character. But there's a strange line of dialogue where Peter says, "So how old's your mum then?" And Brenda replies that her mum is about 40 or 50, and then Peter says, "Oh, she'll be definitely older than that," almost as if he's referencing the fact that in his opinion Brenda is 30. But I guess it's not a point worth dwelling on too much. But certainly I would have liked to have seen more screen time spent in Liverpool at the start of this movie. Just give us an idea of the relationship between Brenda and her mum. Just give us an idea if Brenda has had any boyfriends before, because that's something that confused me. I was never sure in this whether Peter was her first time being with a man or not. That would have been useful information, I think. Peter is the complete opposite from Brenda as a character. He's absolutely despicable. He's one of the worst people I've seen in a movie in quite some time, actually. You will hate him, believe me, if you've never seen this film. And it's almost as if this script is deliberately trying to make you like Brenda as much as possible. At the same time, it's trying to make you hate Peter as much as possible. Because when we get to the ending, and I'm going into the big spoiler now, so if you don't want to know what happens, then scoot. If you're not bothered, then stay. But I will tell you now that there is an unhappy ending to this film. Even though it's not clear what happens at the end, the implication is that Peter survives and Brenda doesn't. And it's a real gut punch, because you'll spend most of the second half of this film desperate for Brenda to go all that last house on the left on this guy Peter. Honestly, chainsaws and all. You will despise this guy. And the fact that we don't get to see him get any kind of punishment for all the horrible things he's done is a blow to us, the viewer. It's been 2 or 3 nights now since I saw the movie, and I'm still not sure how that ending has made me feel about the film overall, because I did enjoy it. I think it's a well-made film with a decent script for the most part, some good characters. But wow, that ending, it's hard for me to reconcile, honestly. As good as she is in this, the casting of Rita Tushington is a little bit problematic, partly because of the age confusion, but also because of her looks. Now, before I go any further, let me just say that this is a wonderful acting performance that she gives here. I mean, the emotional depths she has to go to. You will struggle to find too many better acting performances in all of Hammer, in my opinion. But the trouble is, the film portrays the Brenda character as very much an ugly duckling who men find invisible. And Rita Tushington is a little bit too good looking to play that. I mean, I just don't believe that men would completely ignore this character her entire life to the point where she's become what she is at the start of this story. There's a character called Caroline in the film who works at the same fashion boutique as Brenda, and the film tries to sell you on this concept that men are completely ignoring Brenda and only looking at Caroline. But the only way the film even gets close to pulling this off is by casting the most unbelievably gorgeous blonde to play Caroline. And even then, it's a stretch that all the men in the room would just ignore Brenda and look at Caroline. Because Rita Tushington is a fine-looking actress in her own regard. That's the problem. This actress, I looked at her filmography after watching the movie, and I noticed that Rita Tushington was in a film called Last Night in Soho that came out a couple of years ago. Now, the reason why I mention this is because I actually thought of Last Night in Soho halfway through watching this film, because it's sort of got a similar setup, a young woman from outside London moving to London, and then she gets embroiled in something. So the fact that Rita Tushington just randomly turns up in Last Night in Soho for a little part at the age of about 80, I can't help wondering if that's not entirely a coincidence. Going back to Caroline, she's just one of a handful of really good side characters, because at first you'll just think that this is some random slutty blonde with no personality, but she turns out to be a really nice person, and I love her method of seduction, which is basically to just sit on a settee, cross her legs, don't say a word, and then eventually sex will happen. She does it twice in this movie, and it did tickle me. There's also James Bolam in this. I used to watch The Likely Lads on TV when I was much younger, not so much nowadays. I've not seen James Bolam in anything else apart from The Likely Lads, so it was weird for me to see him in this. For some reason, when I saw the name on the screen, James Bolam, I was expecting the posher one to turn up. Clearly, I'd got the names mixed up in my head. No, so the character that James Bolam's playing, though, it's basically the same guy who's in The Likely Lads, to the point where I actually imagined that after this film, he would just go back to Newcastle and just start telling his buddy all about how he pulled a gorgeous blonde, and then all the women just started disappearing, Bob. I'm glad to get home, I tell you. I've got to quickly talk about the editing. So there's this weird thing in this where we're focusing on a character, and then we'll get a flashback, and then back to the character, and then the flashback again. We get all these quick cuts back and forth, and it's quite jarring at first. But to begin with, you'll think to yourself, okay, they're just doing a quirky little thing here, and then we'll move on. But this ends up being like half the movie. Yeah, we get this technique a lot in this film. It's weird. The bloke who directed this, he's the same guy who did The Italian Job, I think, but I don't recognise most of the rest of his movies. I've not seen The Italian Job in a long, long time, but I remember it being quite a conventionally made movie for the most part, apart from the ending. But this film, they've really gone a little bit pretentious with all these cuts and edits and chopping back and forth. I am positive about the technique, though, for the most part. The only time it really pissed me off is when Peter's paying for something at the newsagents, and we keep cutting back to his mum, and it's a little bit of overkill. I'm like, yes, I get the idea that he's thinking about his mum. You don't need to like keep going on about it. There are other times when I really liked the technique, especially at the fashion boutique. We keep moving from one daft Brenda situation to another, but really quickly. I'm less keen on the title of the movie. Straight On Till Morning is a ludicrous title. How did they come up with that? There's a scene in the second half where Brenda and Peter are about to go to bed, albeit in separate bedrooms, I think. And Peter says something like, and the dialogue isn't as I'm about to say it, but it's close to this. He says something like, yeah, I'll look after you, and straight on till morning. It doesn't even make sense as its own sentence, really. It's just weird. They could have had all sorts as the title for this. The Desperate Scouser, maybe. Or The Desperate Liverpudlian, if you want to be a bit more classy. Or London Loves, or From London with Love. Anything. They could have come up with anything. If they couldn't invent anything good, then just do what the 60s Hammer thrillers did and just insert a random word like nightmare or hysteria, you know, at least something that lets us know what sort of genre we're in. But Straight On Till Morning, it sounds more like a comedy film. In fact, I'm pretty sure that when I was first going through Hammer's filmography to try and decide what I might like to check out, what I might like to skip, I think I did initially just go straight past this film, assuming that it was a comedy just from the title. It sounds like a carry-on film, a carry-on type film that didn't have permission to use the words carry on. So instead of calling it Carry On Until Morning, they've called it Straight On Until Morning. But whatever. Overall, I'm less positive about the film now that I've been talking about it for 10 minutes. When I turned it off the other night, I felt like it was a decent movie that just ruined a little bit by a poor ending. Now I kind of feel like it's an average movie that's made even more average by a poor ending. It just doesn't earn that ending. If you're going to do an ending like that, then the rest of the movie has to be a more serious, proper deep dive into the character of Brenda. We need more stuff from her past, more stuff from Liverpool. We need to learn more about why she is the way she is and stuff. Not just, you know, okay, we're going to dump her in London. Well, a few funny scenes at the fashion boutique. And, oh, look, now she's met Peter. I did enjoy watching the character a lot of the time, but it all gets really bleak once she meets Peter. And the trouble is she meets him quite early on. It feels like halfway through the movie. So we've reached that point where I show you the version of the film that I've got, but before we do that, I'm going to do the score. I'm going to flip things around today. So let's get to the bag of terror. So we've got 1, 2, 2.5 bloody axes out of 5. I was actually thinking along the lines of 3.5 just after I watched it the other night, but the more I've stewed on the film, the score keeps coming down. It's a good job I reviewed it today, actually, not tomorrow. Maybe I would have given it 2 if I'd have reviewed it tomorrow. It's not a terrible film, just, I don't know, it just makes too many wrong choices in key moments, especially at the end. Right, I'll show you the Blu-ray that I've got. Here is my copy of Straight On Until Morning, and I kind of regret buying it now. It only cost me £10, so not a lot of money, but I don't see myself ever watching it again. It's just going to end up on the shelf in amongst all the other Hammer films, just never getting touched again, probably. I just can't see why I would ever come back to this. I mean, I might feel differently years down the line, you never know. I've got films in my collection that I would only say are 2 out of 5 movies, things like Jason 10, but I will watch something like that, you know, every now and again, because it's just dumb fun, even though it's a shit movie. But something as bleak as the second half of Straight On Until Morning, I can't see myself deciding to put myself through that again, even though I would say it's a slightly better movie than Jason 10. Right, I'll leave it there for today. I'll be back soon to do another Hammer review. My next one will be the final Dracula film, whatever it's called, Legend of the Golden Samurai Vampires or whatever it is. Right, until next time, take care.